Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest video in our series focused on IR careers. We are joined once again by Smooch Repovich Reynolds, founder and CEO of SmoochUnplugged. Smooch, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's always great to have a conversation with you, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. And in today's video, we're going to discuss the career path of IRO to CFO, and then also to CEO, something we don't see that often. So Smooch, I wanted to start off by asking you, how many IROs are we seeing arrive in the chief financial officer role at the moment? And sort of what are the kinds of candidates that can make that jump?
Well, it's a great question, Tim. I mean, we've seen a huge increase in IROs migrating to the CFO chair. It's been a long time coming. I've always believed that that would be a natural step for IROs. It's been probably about a decade in the making. And I would say about 35% of today's IROs have made it to the CFO chair. And I think what's required to do that is a very strong and solid background in finance, both traditional corporate finance, maybe public accounting, and a chapter in the investment community doesn't hurt as well. But you definitely have to have that analytical corporate finance background to make it to the CFO chair.
Fantastic. Well, that's a big proportion of IROs. That's fantastic to hear. And that's, of course, to CFO roles of divisions, but also of public companies as a whole. But then to move on to the sort of next part of this conversation, how big a jump is it then to move into a chief executive officer role? I mean, this isn't something we hear about so much. So, how are candidates able to achieve this?
Well, you're right. We don't hear about it very much, but I suspect that there are more CEOs who've done a tour of duty through the IRO chair than we know about. I've had some as clients, and just a quick anecdote about one of them. He told me that he went kicking and screaming into the IR chair, but his CFO at the time said, "This is what you need to do to prepare you to go on in senior management roles." Once he made it to the CEO chair, upon reflection, he said that his chapter in investor relations was the single best training he had to become a public company CEO. So I think the journey between CFO and CEO is a rather long one, Tim, simply because I think you have to move into different senior management team roles, maybe lead an operating group, lead a geographic region. But I've always believed for more than 2 decades that IR talent, because they've been at the nexus of everything that makes a company tick, they have the ability to move to the CEO chair. And I think it's exciting to see that some of this is happening, even though it's not quite as public, if you will, as we'd like it to be.
No, that's very interesting and very exciting as well. And, we've known for a long time that investor relations is a great sort of stepping stone into that CFO role, but really interesting that it can provide that background for going into the CEO chair as well. And Smooch, if I kind of just like to ask a question about the impact of the pandemic here too, because I think one thing we've talked about before is how there's been a lot of disruption from the pandemic in terms of how companies are structured, who they think is right for their senior management team, and so on. And so what kind of impact has that had in terms of creating opportunities for IROs to sort of move into these more senior roles?
I think it's had a huge impact, Tim, in a lot of ways. The world is forever changed. And when I think about the construct of a management team and the type of talent they're looking for, first of all, I think this pandemic has made every CEO and their management teams and boards of directors think differently about human capital. And that's really the point of it. We've needed to do that as a society around the world for a long time. And I think it's prompted more open-mindedness. I think it has prompted leadership teams to think more about the corporate athlete notion that I've talked about for many years. It's not about do you have everything in a functional expertise, but how broad is your business acumen? How do you think holistically about solving corporate problems? And I think that opens the doors, whether it's for the IRO or other functions. I think it opens the door for those who are intellectually curious, continuous improvement mindsets, who want to be involved with the success of a company. I think it opens up the door hugely.
Fantastic. Thank you, Smooch. And As you know, we like to finish these videos with one piece of advice that IROs can take away and sort of use in their day-to-day roles. So just on this topic, in terms of moving into some of these more senior positions, what's like one takeaway we could give to IROs today?
I've been clear about this for many years, Tim. The answer is always yes when your boss asks you to do something outside of your core functional area. They're never going to ask you to do a job that you're going to fail at because it's on their watch, but they are going to open the door to opportunities that are new and fresh and invigorating and give you an opportunity to expand your business acumen and your experience, which can only lead to better things.
Fantastic, Smooch. Well, I think that's a great piece of advice to finish on. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and expertise on this topic. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Tim.